Welcome to Music Matters Podcast with Daryl Craig Harris, talking about all things music with celebrities, artists, music business insiders, and more.
Miss Fiona Ross, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm fine. Thank you. How are you?
I am very good. So we've been friends now for a while. We first met through our friends at Jazz in Europe magazine. Our good friend Nigel, who is also the editor for this podcast. And you've got a lot going on, as you always do. Some people may have seen our other episodes. Some people maybe have not been introduced to you before. So you have a great background. Child actor, singer on the stage in the West End, journalist, musician, artist, just so many hats. Very successful artist, I should say. So let's tell people a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get started with music and all that? I know it's a big story, but...
I guess it is a big story. I think I have one of those crazy stage mums. So literally from the minute I don't remember anything else. So as soon as I was able to walk, my mum had me in dance lessons and acting lessons and singing lessons. And she famously kind of says that my first professional job was when I was 2. So I've literally done it kind of all my life. And I trained for the theatre. So I trained in dance, drama and music. So kind of I started learning the piano when I was 6. But the stage was where the goal was initially. That was, to be fair, my parents' dream, really, although I didn't ever object. So don't get me wrong, I wasn't forced into anything. But theatre was kind of the goal, and I did some of that, but then fell in love and got married and had children, and then got divorced. And so my kind of, working life changed a little bit, and music became more of a focus because I couldn't be doing theatre work as a single parent, and also worked in education. And yes, it is a long story, really.
Yeah, and you actually ran a very well-known art school in London. Could tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I started, I feel awful looking back on it, but when I was 16, I was actually doing a bit of part-time work as an accompanist at a ballet school, because I was a classically trained pianist, and I was trying to earn a bit of extra money, as we do, trying to do a bit of everything.
Oh, yes.
And I was asked to teach. I had some of the parents who said, do you teach? And I remember at the time thinking, I'm 16, of course I don't teach, that's just ridiculous. And I completely dismissed it. But then a few friends of mine said, no, you make a little bit of money, do a bit of piano lessons. So I started to teach, and obviously didn't have a clue what I was doing, but turned out I really loved that. And I love helping people, basically helping them achieve, helping them see what they can do. And that led to some work teaching musical theatre, which then eventually led to being head of the British Academy of New Music.
I know, and I let you say that because I could never get it correct. The time.
And it no longer exists.
The Royal Academy, blah, blah, blah.
And it no longer exists as well. The building's been knocked down and everything. It's very sad.
Yeah. And we talked about that before, but you actually, and there was a lot of really people that went on to become very famous that went to that school, Ed Sheeran, Rita Ora, many others. So it's kind of was kind of a fame school in a way, right?
I think it in some ways, but it was a lot dirtier, I think, if you like. It was in East London, which is not a very wealthy area. These were students that didn't have support, so it was not fancy in any way, shape or form, and the whole surroundings was very gritty, that kind of East London vibe. So it was amazing, but yes, it wasn't fancy in any way.
Right. Yeah, it's great to have that experience. It's always nice to be around young artists, when they're just starting the lights are really turning on for them, and that's always exciting. And that's part of your mission, even through teaching, is also doing what you're doing now, which is women in jazz media, that kind of folds together with your journalism career and your music career. And I should say that you've been a very successful jazz artist. How many albums do you have out now? I think it's 5.
I think it's 6. I'm working on my 7th now. I'm going to look. Okay. I'm going to look to the side. Yes, I've got 6. Sorry, I've got 6 on my wall there. I'm it's 6. I'm working on my 7th.
Yeah, awesome, and very multiple award-winning, globally known, and an amazing singer and artist and music. writer, I should say. And then, so Women in Jazz Media, tell me how that came about. And we're going to also talk about your magazine, which you have going on too.
So you mentioned Nigel, the fabulous Nigel, and it was his birthday the other day. So shout out publicly, very publicly to Nigel and a happy birthday.
Yes.
So I was working with, obviously with Jazz in Europe, which is how we met. So that's how I kind of got into journalism when he first asked me to write. But I was aware, as wonderful as Jazz in Europe was, and supportive as they were, as I was exploring, I realized there weren't many women in journalism at all. There were very few female writers that I was aware of. And it became a bit of a mission for me. I mean, I've always been passionate about diversity and inclusion and all those areas, which I'm sure we'll chat about in a bit. But there was a particular day I was looking at a publication, and I won't name the publication, because sometimes it's quite hard to find the writers. You look at publications all the time and they don't publicize the writers. They don't publicize the behind the scenes for a variety of reasons. But I was looking at this publication and there was a page of writers. I was like, oh, this is brilliant. They've actually, they're celebrating the writers, and there was photos of all these writers. And there were 52. And I was like, my God, this is amazing. This is quite a prestigious magazine as well. I was like, this is brilliant. But then seconds after I was very excited that they were celebrating the writers, I realized that out of 52, because I did count, there was only 2 women in that list, in these photos, and everyone was white.
Yeah, which is a bit odd, especially with jazz, because you think of it as being very diverse, right?
This is the thing of all the different genres, jazz really. So, and the thing is, I'm aware of this and have been aware of this for many, many years. But on this particular day, I just had enough. I was like, no, I just can't take it anymore. What can I do? Where are the women? How can we do something? And at the time, I just thought, I'm just going to start a Facebook page. I thought I'll start a Facebook group. And see if I can, get in touch with some other women and, perhaps we can chat, a little community. And it was really as simple as that. And I was setting up the Facebook page. And it was straight after, seeing this page. And I thought, well, what am I going to call it? It's Women in Jazz, but there's lots of different amazing groups that are called Women in Jazz. But, this is a different thing. This is about at the time, the writing. It was very specifically about the journalism side of things. So I just thought, okay, well, media, it kind of comes under the heading of media. So but there was no kind of deep thought into this. It was literally that.
Oftentimes the obvious thing is the right path, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was, there was no deep thought into it at all. And then literally the next day, I got a direct message onto the page from a writer in China, this woman who is actually now part of our team. And she said to me, I think I'm the only female jazz journalist in all of China. She said, wow. I don't know any other women who do this. And I've been looking for something like this for the past 8 years. I'm so glad I found you. And at that moment, I was like, oh, okay, this is big. This is big. When I think about it, I was just thinking about writers. I hadn't given it any more thought than that. And then not long after that, I had a direct message from a writer in Spain who said similar thing, but said that it's really hard in Spain for women. And it just opened up this massive kind of world for me that, although I was aware of, certainly not in that depth. So I decided if I was going to do this, I'd better do it properly. So I came up with a mission statement and also looked at, if we're media, I thought, well, that's not just writers, that's photographers. That's everybody behind the scenes. Right. So it kind of grew from there, and I've got a fabulous team now as well. So that's how it started.
Yeah, and your team is actually really, truly global. How many folks are involved now at this point as far as writing goes?
Well, there's 22 in the team in total. I'd have to count the writers.
Yeah, folks that are your primary members. You also have contributors, right? I would assume.
Yeah, and this is what's amazing about the team, and actually kind of what makes the work we do is the different skills, experience of the women in the team. So we have jazz journalists, who work for Downbeat, for example. So kind of, some of the big publications, but we also have musicians. Right. We have photographers. We have people who haven't written before, but are actually interested. I've got one of our team, Isabel, who's just joined. She's just finished her music degree. So she's just beginning her career as a jazz journalist. And it's wonderful to be able to give her that platform. So we've got a combination of, composers, musicians, writers, photographers, artists. It's incredible.
Yeah, and that's great. And also, too, your jazz artist background just really it fits so well with this, of course, because you know the struggle and you know how it is to be a beginning jazz artist and a successful jazz artist. Tell me about that, like especially since post COVID in London, and you've been always very busy doing gigs and that kind of thing. What's that been like since COVID? And did that actually help you in a way build the magazine because people were kind of at home?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly, I think my experience, I'm very fortunate to have had such a diverse kind of range of experiences, because at the end of the day, it's not about me, women in jazz media, it's about supporting kind of the women out there and the jazz industry. Right. So it's not just about my experience. So having that kind of variety of different people in the team is essential. How would we know what to do if we didn't have different people, different backgrounds, different experiences?
Right.
But COVID, I think, to be honest, if it hadn't been in lockdown, then maybe I wouldn't have done it at that time. I mean, to be honest, I'm sure it would have happened at some point, but obviously I was at home all the time. So I wasn't going out. There was no live music and people were suffering. And I did do, in fact, with Jazz in Europe, I did a lockdown lunchtime. I did an interview series for people in lockdown to try and kind of share their experience and, the good things and the bad things. So I was very passionate about trying to support people during that time because, and of course it was global, it was awful, and I think for musicians, irrelevant of gender, it was a time when some people, we wondered who we were, if we, as a performer, if we're not performing, who are we? And I think a lot of people were having those questions. So that self-identity and also money, not earning money. So it was a very challenging time. But I also think that there's a huge amount of positives that came out of it, certainly for me. I mean, my life is genuinely better since lockdown for many different reasons. Right, so yes, I think because of that time.
Yeah, those things make you reevaluate. I mean, that's actually the reason why I started this podcast, because I was sitting at home here in Las Vegas going, okay, now what? And of course, you don't know how long that's going to happen. So, it's but it's never been easy being a musician or a journalist for that matter. It's always been a challenge. And I think, definitely the personality has to be somebody that's willing to kind of be a go-getter and get out there and make stuff happen, right? That's part of getting interviews and all that.
Yeah, and I think that's a key driving force for me is the creative industries and irrelevant, what role you have. It's really hard. It's really hard. And I say, bringing my own experience to that from when I was younger, I remember the auditions, and again, from a theatre point of view, but you walk into a room, you kind of sing your heart out, and then you just get next. You get no feedback. You get no kind of, oh, that was lovely. But I mean, very harsh, that world. And that's something that I've grown up with. So I'm quite resilient, which is all fair enough. But firstly, not everyone's that resilient. But also, I'm not sure that you have to be kind of put up with some of the things that are out there, So I think, with women in jazz media, it's very much about, yes, it's a hard industry. Yes, there's going to be challenges. But what can we actually do to support and make it, even if it's a tiny bit easier, then there must be something that we can do.
Yeah, and it's nice to build that sisterhood, right? Where you have support, you can support each other. If somebody has a question, they don't feel like that, kind of stupid for asking. You create that safe environment where they can grow as journalists, right?
That's the safe environment thing is huge. And I think quite often people say to me, that, how do I do it? How do I get the energy? How do I get inspired? Well, it's the people I work with. That's what inspires me, not just the women in the team. Every day, something will happen. I will talk to someone. I'll listen to some music. I'll see someone, the sense of community, and men too. And I think that's the thing with women in jazz media. We're looking at those inequalities and where there is a gender imbalance, because historically in jazz, women have never been, welcomed initially. I mean, there's famous articles in the 30s where there were questions about, do women belong in jazz? And the answer was apparently no. So,
tell that to Billie Holiday.
I know, right? And so, and there's a whole history of women not being welcomed. So, I cannot stress the importance of having, that safe environment, just as you say, to chat. And quite often, and we have these we call it ladies that do so much more than lunch. And we have these Zoom meetings that we try and do once a month. And it's just an open forum. It's an open forum to say, do you know what? I can't get any gigs, or I've been trying this venue, no one's getting back to me, or I want to get some radio play. Does anyone have any kind of radio stations that they can suggest? Or, no one's writing at me. I've sent my album off. No one's reviewing me. Or even just I'm knackered. I'm really tired. But it's just having that space to actually have those conversations. Everyone, I say, regardless of gender, to be fair, everyone needs that.
Yeah, and you can learn something from everybody. I mean, everybody, even the beginning person, they may have some really cool idea, and you're like, I didn't even think about that. But because they're new, they don't really have the boundaries that you kind of grow into as you get older. Become a jaded journalist, I guess. I don't know. So putting together the magazine, that is a big job. So are you actually the editor, or how is that set up? What's the mechanics of that?
Yeah, well, and me now. I kind of, I very rarely say no to things, and if it's something I don't know how to do, same problem. I know. I'm quite happy to give it a go. And it was International Women's Day, not this year, but last year, and I think we've been going about 6 months. And initially, I was speaking to a publication about doing a partnership on International Women's Day. So they would create the magazine and we would provide the content. So, and then it kind of, that fell apart for a variety of different reasons, nothing dodgy or anything. It just kind of didn't happen. But it didn't happen really a short amount of time before International Women's Day. And me being me, I was going to swear then, I better not swear. But me being me, I was like, well, I'm still doing it. I'm like, we're just going to, I was like, we're just going to have to do it. I've kind of said to them, I've got these articles, people have been interviewing people. I've got all this content. I need to create a magazine. So I did. And I learned how to use the software and kind of tried to do my best to work out how to do it. And they've been getting better and better. And you can see actually from the first couple of magazines that we did. And they look good, I think. But they're certainly, getting better because now I feel a little bit more secure in knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah, you can relate to Nigel's background with the magazine. That's such a big job. I mean, people don't realize they see a magazine, it looks great, and they don't realize all the parts and pieces that go into making that happen, right?
No, and I'll tell you what I think is interesting is because it's an actual magazine. So it's not a website that I've kind of put articles onto. It's created as a magazine that could be printed. So I create this massive document and then I upload it onto a special magazine site. And, so quite often, the proofreading is essential because there's always something. And if it was just an online, so like Jazz in Europe, for example, if there's an error, you can quickly go in there and change it.
Exactly.
But for me, for the magazine, no. It's a whole different thing. Right? Yeah. And I have to quite often stress that the proofreading, just get people to, because you become word blind. You look at this document, for so long. So the proofreading for me is essential. And there's always something wrong.
It's actually funny. Our friend Nigel, he was a senior editor for Jazz in Europe Plus. I think I said that, but it was funny because he had contacted me. I kind of like he did with you, and he said, "Hey, he actually had seen our interview when I was in London, our live stream." And he's like, "Hey, I want you to write for Jazz in Europe magazine." And I'm like, "I'm really not a writer. I like doing interviews, of course, but I said, so I need a really good editor." And he's like, "I don't mind doing it." I'm like, "Well, you're a brave soul." Because the writing, the physical, actually mechanical part of writing it is a different thing. Like you said, the proofreading and making sure grammar is all online or on point and making that all make sense is a bit of a challenge.
Well, it is. And I love that challenge because what I find particularly interesting and I think is part of what we're about with Women in Jazz Media is different people's voices. As I say, I know that, you're interviewing me about Women in Jazz Media and quite often my name is kind of out there, but it's about everybody's voice and the diversity of those voices and the different types of voices. So, what I love about the articles when I have different writers, as I say, we've got kind of, established experienced writers who know their stuff, and for me to actually put in a magazine is just adding some images. It's really not hard. But then you've got brand new writers who are not experienced. So they're kind of that proofreading and the checking.
Them, right?
Yeah, so but still, for me, what is important is that their individual voice comes out. So I don't think the magazine has a writing style, and I like that, though. So because we have the diversity of different writers in there, so different voices. So I do quite like that, but it's more of a challenge for trying to edit and kind of proofread everything. It takes a bit longer.
And that actually, that's what you say about the style of the magazine. Like, that's a great thing, but it also could be a prison in a way for writers, because then they feel like they have to write a certain way, and you don't really want that, right?
Well, I don't, and I say it's no criticism at all on any publications that do that. And I know some of our partner publications that we've been working with and trying to get more women writers, to work with their publication. I've had lots of conversations about their writing style, so what they look for a writer, the type of articles, and of course there's nothing wrong with that at all. But for me and the work we do, it's not about one single voice. It's about everybody's different voice, and that it's all valid. So I think it's important for me that we have that diversity of writers, so that there isn't one voice. It's not women in jazz media's voice. It's everyone else's.
Right. And diversity is the key. And not only, social, racial, whatever, you want to hear the different perspectives, because that's where the value is, I think.
Well, yeah. And also, isn't that what jazz is about?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what it should be about.
I think so.
I think so too. Speaking of journalists, and not only just jazz journalists, but journalism in general, what are some of the key things that you look for in a journalist, or that you would say are most important when you're functioning in that role?
What an interesting question. Well, actually, I had Isabel. I'm sure she won't mind me talking about her in the team, because I say she's just finished her degree, and she wants to become a jazz journalist. So we've been chatting quite a bit about what she needs to do, what she needs to look for, and of course, a key thing for her, as it is for all, is eventually she wants to be paid. She wants to, her job as a jazz journalist. So we've been chatting an awful lot about not just the contacts and connections, but building her portfolio. And look, I am not an expert. As much as I've been doing this for a while, I will never profess to be an expert at anything. I do need to make that clear. But what I've said to her is about how she finds her own voice. What does she want to write about? What is she passionate about? And we had a great chat only last night, actually, about her area of interest. So she's particularly interested in, I don't want to call it world music, but kind of the different cultures around the world and how that impacts on creating music. She's also passionate about the LGBTQ plus community, and not enough is written about that. So I think for me, anyone I look at that I've seen write, or I think could write, ultimately it's about that passion for something. That for me is key.
Yeah, and finding that, it takes a while sometimes to find that, or some people know it right off the bat, but you got to kind of, like you said, find your, what's my lane? What really gets me excited?
Yeah, well, and I didn't. And again, I mean, we can only, use our own experience, where appropriate. So when Nigel first started asked me to write, I reviewed a few albums. And I'll be honest, the first thing I did was, okay, what kind of things do you review? So I spent ages looking at loads of different people's reviews, trying to work out, okay, how does one review?
How does this work for me? Right.
Yeah. How does it work? And it took me a little while. And again, if anyone was to look at my portfolio, I would hope you'll see a significant difference in the writing, because it took me a while to figure out who I am as a writer.
Right. Find your voice.
Fair, yeah, exactly. And I think, to be fair, that didn't come until I started interviewing. And I don't like reviewing. I very rarely review now, only when someone is really, really keen and feels that it would be of value. But I don't like reviewing.
Yeah, it's hard because, it's like looking at a Picasso. Like, some people like that, some people don't. So you bring your own personal biases into whatever you're reviewing. So you have to, it's so challenging. And I get the same thing. People contact me about that. I'm like, it's not that's not my thing.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's and the thing is, as artists, we need reviews, and I completely understand that. So we need reviews, but it is just my opinion. Right. And my opinion is not more or less important than your opinion or anyone else's opinion. So I think for me, it's the pressure on me that, it feels like, well, Fiona Ross says that this album is brilliant. It's like, well, who cares what Fiona Ross thinks about this album?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I will happily shout about stuff that I love. I will happily do that with or without a review.
And what's funny about that too is I've listened to albums and then I came back 10 years later, 5 years later. I'm like, oh, actually, I really like that. It's just happens to be your perspective at the moment. But it is true.
Yeah.
People need that. That's a currency of what we do, that people want the reviews. They want that. That's part of the deal, I guess. But
they do. And I fully appreciate that. And again, that's a lot of the work that we do in Women in Jazz Media, is that women get in touch with us because they need reviews, they need articles, they need press. And in fact, there was, and again, I won't say who, because that's the key thing about what we do in Women in Jazz Media. We don't name names, all that behind the scenes stuff. We have those hard conversations and things happen, but we don't kind of name and shame ever. That's not what we do.
Yeah, and you just really want to build upon what's there and create some new pathways for young writers and journalists. Yeah, that's and we need more of that, because I get, as a photographer, which is one of my 10 jobs, I get those questions a lot. And like, how do I get into this? How do I get into that? My key thing I always say is people have to hear you and see you before they can hire you. So your most important job as a journalist, as a creative, is get your work out there so people can discover you. That's the key thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that we do, is just sharing women. And so there was a programmer for a very well-known venue who I was talking to. And his first question is, have they got a review? That was, right. That was his kind of, point was like, well, show me a review. So I know that reviews are really, really important. So we do those, where possible. But I don't like it.
Yeah, I know. It's the artist in us. It's hard to judge other artists. I never like doing that. We call it, what was it? The jazz jury, right? That was our other thing.
The jazz police. Yeah, the jazz police. Yeah. And the thing is, and this is where I think I try and find that balance of me as a musician and as a composer, as an artist myself. I don't want to critically analyze anything. In many respects, I just want to play. I just want to feel it. I just want to, that go with the flow thing that I talk about a lot. So when I'm reviewing, sometimes I just want to go, I love this, or this is amazing, or I love that groove. Well, that, obviously you can't, that's not a review. So I sometimes don't like being forced in that position of kind of, writing more than, I just want to go, this is amazing.
Right. I hear you. How can people that are journalists, or they want to find the magazine to begin with, but how can they reach you, and what's the pathway for that?
Well, we're on all over social media, but our website is womeninjazzmedia.com. And there's loads of different email addresses on there, because we have a playlist that we release every month. We have gig opportunities, or just any conversation. But yes, womeninjazzmedia.com is our website, or we're on all social media.
Awesome. And then when is your next album? When are you looking to have that released?
It's funny you should say that, because I'm in the studio tomorrow night, and I was thinking about this, and I don't know why, and this is, as my son would say, classic mum, where I decide to do something with no reason whatsoever, but I set myself a target and a deadline. And then I kind of work hard to meet this deadline, but no one's made me. And I was going to get this album out this year. So I was looking at it thinking, oh God, I haven't got, it's nearly September. I haven't got very long. Because I tend to release an album. Well, I have released an album every year.
Right.
And I don't know why.
It's a big undertaking.
And I don't know why I do that. But in my head, I'm like, I've got to get this out. But I've already done an album this year. So literally today I was thinking, oh, hang on, actually, I don't need to rush it. So it'll come out next year, basically, probably March, April.
Yeah, because you're very busy. It's like me. You have 10 jobs. you have a lot going on.
You know what, I do, and I fail a lot. And I think my music is the one thing that has suffered with all the work that I've done. And I tried a different tactic with this album, which hasn't worked. So I've changed direction now, because I thought, rather than the whole album as a massive project, and normally it's kind of, 2 months of after I've written everything, studio, I thought, well, this time, because I haven't got time, I'll do it bit by bit. So maybe I'll do 3 songs. So I'll write 2 or 3 songs, then I'll record them, do it bit by bit. But then what happened is I recorded some stuff ages ago and then stopped. So I was like, no, okay, this is not going to work bit by bit. So I'm fully on it. And, I think I've got 9 songs written. I've got a few more to write. And so we're in
Awesome.
the studio again tomorrow. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, and you have an amazing band, some really a very diverse band, I should say too, and it's just like you guys are just great live. I love watching you when I come to London. Hopefully, I'll be back in London soon, and I can come and hang out with you at one of the gigs.
I would love you to. Yeah, and honestly, I am so honoured to work with the people that I work with. And in fact, last time I saw you, you played with us at the London Jazz Festival.
Right. Yeah. I said it.
Didn't you?
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just great guys. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. And in fact, my next gig is the London Jazz Festival in November. And I might play a couple of the new songs. So I'm quite excited about that.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll come over then. It was actually
Please
funny.
do.
Yeah, I know that my schedule has gotten so nuts, and I'm going to be in Finland in September. And there's also a boxing match which I shoot. That's like the week before, and I'm like, in London. So, it's impossible. Trying to coordinate all that's nuts. I know, it's crazy. How can people find your music sites online? Let's do that too.
Okay, well, again, I'm all over social media. You can just type in Fiona Ross Jazz on Google, and I'm actually the first few pages on Google. Or my website, which is just fionaross.co.uk.
Awesome.
But yeah, Fiona Ross Jazz on Google, easiest thing to do. You will find me.
Yeah, please, everybody, please check out Fiona's music. Please check out Women in Jazz Media. I love what you guys are doing. I know some of your writers and contributors. They're great people. Our friend Ash, who's in London, is amazing. And she also does is doing the London Jazz Festival. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I know we're both crazy busy scheduling wise, so we managed to put it together. Yay.
We did, honestly, and thank you so much. And I should point out actually that during the London Jazz Festival last year, you were amazing. You came to London, you interviewed a lot of the team, some of the performers, and did some great photos. So I really appreciate the support you've given Women in Jazz Media as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. And, it's just so many great people that I have become friends that I'm talking to pretty regularly now, and amazing talent. So, yeah, it's so fun. I mean, as you know, just to travel and see other musicians and interact. That's one of the things I really enjoy about what I do. And I know you do as well. So,
yeah, because didn't Hannah Horton, she played for you on something? Yeah, because she's in the team now. Yeah. But yes, she played on a song for you, I think, didn't she?
Yeah, we used her for our project in Finland, and we're just going to be more of that. So Hannah Horton's a great sax player based in London, I love doing that. Just like you, I love mixing it up. And if I see talented people, if we can do projects together, that's a win for everybody. It makes me really happy to be able to do that. So.
Yeah. Oh no. And Hannah's amazing. And I should say, because I'm pointing out Hannah, everyone in the team is amazing.
That's true. I agree with that. Hey, awesome. Have a great day. Let's stay in touch, and maybe we'll do another update in a few months. And I know you always have new things coming up. So maybe when the new album comes up too, we can chat again.
Lovely. Honestly, thank you so much. And thank you for all you do and your support.
Well, likewise. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please check out the podcasts on all podcast outlets, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the usuals. And like and follow us. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, Fiona.
Thanks for joining us, and please consider subscribing to our podcast and follow us on our social media pages for guest announcements.